There's definitely some subconscious aspect to getting on a boat to an island. There's nothing you can do about any problems or stresses you might have back home, so you start to relax and forget about them. Even by Mull standards, the bay was isolated. It was a good half an hour walk down a very muddy track. I felt that any issues I was having, whilst important to me maybe, were perhaps not that important in the context we found ourselves in, and that certainly allowed me to think about my work in a less stressful manner. I thought a lot about my research and what it means in the context of other things in my life, which I think is a very healthy thing to do. The weekend gave me some healthy perspective. At other times I thought about absolutely nothing except how beautiful the place was and how nice the waves sounded and how great it was to be out of the city. In the context of the otherwise intense conversations we were having, this was quite therapeutic. Networking, as far as I'm concerned, can be very tiresome. You're often trying to sell yourself or the work you're doing, and you're constantly under pressure of time and needing to talk to the next important person. In contrast to this, in Mull, I felt like I had plenty of time to talk to people, and I was asking them about what they were doing and comparing notes for the enjoyment and stimulation of doing so. It was an end in itself rather than a means to an end. The most important aspect of the setting of Camas for me was the breathing space. A lot of the discussions we had could be considered hard work, because they related to harrowing and very difficult topics. Being in the middle of nowhere gave us room to absorb and process this, and the space we needed to think about what we were talking about, but more than that, to ponder it. Some of the most personally useful conversations I had were out with any of the workshops, just chatting to people over a cup of tea or on a walk through the vegetable garden. The almost instantaneous closeness that comes with being in the middle of nowhere in what was an unusual environment for most of us also meant that people were very honest with that discomfort in our formal and informal discussions about ourselves and our research. I learnt a lot about my place in my research, and it was incredibly useful to be able to speak to people who were doing similar work. It turns out a lot of the problems, stresses, difficulties, but also joys and successes are experiences that I share with other people. The irony of the trip for me was that in such splendid isolation I ended up feeling much less isolated as a PhD student.